You didn't stumble here. You were pulled, as if by some invisible gravity, into this exact moment because something in your frequency has begun to question its own reflection. You've felt it before, haven't you? The pattern that loops through your relationships like a ghost script, different faces. Same story. The conversation that feels eerily familiar. The emotional rhythm you swore you'd escaped. It isn't punishment. It's the mirror of your own resonance. There is an architecture beneath attraction, an unseen circuitry linking your consciousness to every connection you've ever known. Think of it as quantum feedback, each unresolved emotion sending out a silent pulse, each attachment echoing through the field until it finds a matching vibration to play against. And so, the same type of person arrives, again and again, until awareness breaks the pattern. But awareness alone isn't the cure, it's the doorway. You begin to see that relationships aren't random. They're instruments tuning you to your own frequency. Every heartbreak, every moment of déjà vu is a signal from the quantum mirror, asking, do you still resonate with this version of yourself? Imagine the invisible filaments of energy connecting you to another being, not through time or logic, but through resonance. When you shift your state, those filaments shimmer, realign, recompose the symphony of your connections. This is where transformation begins, not in chasing new people, but in tuning the frequency that chooses them. You are not trapped, you are entangled. And entanglement can be rewritten. Right now, as these words pass through you, the field listens. It registers your recognition. The mirror trembles. The reflection begins to change. This is where the shift begins, where you stop asking, why them, and start asking, why me, not in blame, but in revelation. The quantum mirror doesn't punish, it teaches. And the moment you see the lesson, you no longer need the repetition. The field awaits your new vibration. The mirror has shifted, but what lies behind it beneath the shimmer of recognition? There's a deeper structure, a kind of unseen architecture built from every thought, emotion, and decision you've ever made in relationship. You could call it your energetic blueprint, a lattice of probability and memory that quietly scripts the people you meet and the lessons they bring. At first, it feels accidental. You fall into familiar dynamics and tell yourself it's just your type. But beneath that simple label lives a network of resonance patterns, vibrational signatures left behind by past versions of you. When one of those signatures is still active, the quantum field interprets it as a command. Bring me someone who fits this template. The universe doesn't judge. It simply responds. These blueprints aren't static, they evolve with awareness. Every time you repeat an emotional response, you reinforce an old structure. Every time you observe without reacting, you weaken it. Picture it like a holographic web, pulsing with your current frequency. Fear tightens it. Surrender loosens it. Love reorganizes it. Most people never see the scaffolding. They live within it, mistaking the walls for fate. But once you begin to sense its geometry, the predictable loops of attraction and withdrawal, the familiar faces arriving in new disguises, you begin to glimpse the code. It's not the person who repeats, it's the pattern that summons them. This is the hidden science of repetition. Consciousness constructs its own architecture, then forgets it did. You are both the designer and the resident of your relational blueprint. Every emotion you suppress becomes a load-bearing beam. Every forgiveness you offer, a window that lets in new light. The field rearranges itself accordingly, precise as mathematics, yet fluid as music. Consider this when two frequencies meet. They don't merge at random. They interfere, sometimes amplifying, sometimes canceling. The same principle applies to relationships. Your inner frequency determines whether the interference creates harmony or distortion. Each interaction tests the stability of your architecture. A collapse isn't failure, it's renovation. And so, you may notice the same storyline playing out: attraction, connection, dissonance, collapse. But now you can see it differently. Each repetition reveals where your structure is outdated, where you've been living in a house built by an old version of you. The arguments, the disappointments, the unspoken longings, they are the field's way of saying, this foundation no longer fits the frequency you've become. It's tempting to analyze every relationship like a puzzle, hunting for meaning in the other person's behavior. But what if they're simply the mirror mason, the soul assigned to press against the weak spots in your design so you can rebuild them stronger? What if their role isn't to stay, but to help you see when awareness dawns, the blueprint begins to update? The architecture of repetition doesn't crumble overnight. It gradually reconfigures as you hold a new emotional tone. Bit by bit, the old scaffolding fades, replaced by coherence. You begin to sense new kinds of people orbiting your field, those who match not your wounds, but your healed resonance. And yet, you must honor the old structures before they dissolve. They carried you through countless lessons, teaching you about your strength, your worth, your capacity for love. Gratitude is the final tool of reconstruction. When you thank the past, the quantum field interprets it as completion. The loop no longer needs to repeat. Pause here. Feel the architecture humming beneath your awareness, the corridors of memory, the chambers of longing, the walls painted with echoes of old versions of you. Then imagine light moving through that structure, washing the geometry clean. The blueprint begins to shimmer, transparent, ready for redesign. This is how the architecture changes, not through force, but through illumination, not by breaking the mirror, but by recognizing what it reflects. The next time a familiar face appears, don't rush to escape it. Observe it as a message from the blueprint itself, inviting you to step into a new design, because behind every repetition lies the invitation to rebuild, and the builder has always been you. The architecture hums, alive with awareness, but awareness itself can become another loop. You've seen it before, the moment you finally notice the pattern, only to watch it replay yet again. You tell yourself you understand, you've done the work, and still, the same story finds you. Why? Because observation, when charged with fear or judgment, doesn't free you. It feeds the very structure you wish to dissolve. This is the observer's trap. The mind believes that seeing is enough. It studies the data of heartbreak, draws conclusions, builds theories, but in the quantum sense, observation isn't passive, it's creative. The moment you focus on a possibility, you strengthen its probability. Stare too long at your wounds, and you amplify the frequency that keeps recreating them. The loop hides in the gaze itself. It's subtle. You think you're analyzing, but you're reanimating. You think you're healing, but you're rehearsing. Every "why did this happen" becomes a signal that tells the field. This pattern still matters. Every memory you revisit becomes a brushstroke of energy painting the next version of the same scene. The field isn't moral, it's mathematical. It echoes what you energize. Imagine a particle under observation. It behaves differently simply because it's being watched. Now translate that to emotion. When you fixate on pain, you keep it vibrating in the field. Observation becomes fixation. Reflection turns into recursion. The observer and the observed are locked in a dance that sustains the very thing being examined. And yet, the trap has a hidden door. The same principle that binds you can also free you. The key is neutrality. When observation becomes presence, quiet, unattached, compassionate, the pattern loses charge. You stop feeding it energy, and it begins to dissolve through lack of reinforcement. The field listens not just to what you see, but how you see it. This is where mastery begins. To watch without resistance, to feel without story. to acknowledge without identifying. Every moment you witness your old emotional architecture from stillness. You're performing quantum surgery, extracting energy from the loop without tearing the fabric of the field. Over time, the blueprint reconfigures itself around your calm. Consider how the mind wants to label everything right, wrong, lesson, karma, fate. Each label is a tether. Each judgment is an anchor that keeps you orbiting the same gravitational field. Let them go. Let the experience be information, not identity. The pattern doesn't need interpretation, it needs release. Many seekers mistake constant self-analysis for consciousness. But awareness isn't a microscope, it's a mirror that shines without dissecting. The more you analyze the loop, the tighter it winds. But when you breathe, observe, and allow without feeding it narrative, the pattern loses coherence. The field begins to reorganize around your stillness, because stillness emits no resistance, no reinforcement. You may notice this shift in daily life. Conversations that once triggered you lose their sting. Old memories arise but no longer pull you in. You feel the energetic distance widening between what was and what is becoming. This is not apathy, it's evolution. You're moving from observer to creator, from fixation to flow. Here's the paradox to change the pattern. You must stop trying to change it. Control strengthens entanglement. Surrender dissolves it. The field cannot update while you're wrestling with what is. It moves when you release the need to predict. Observation, stripped of control, becomes liberation. So pause. Let the field settle around your neutrality. Let old probabilities flicker out for lack of attention. You are not escaping the loop by force. You are transcending it through stillness. And from that stillness, a new vibration emerges, one that observes, but does not attach. One that witnesses, but does not repeat. The architecture of repetition begins to crumble quietly, not through battle, but through absence of fuel. The observer has stopped feeding the fire, and as the smoke clears, what remains is clarity, silent, expansive, waiting for your next creation. Clarity glows in the silence left behind by observation, but clarity alone is a fragile flame. Awareness without coherence flickers. It illuminates the loop, but cannot melt it. You've seen the pattern, recognized the mirror, even caught yourself in the observer's trap. Yet the repetition lingers. Why? Because knowing is not the same as embodying. The field responds not to your thoughts about change, but to the frequency of coherence when your mind, heart, and energy hum the same tone. Awareness says, I understand. Coherence says, I am. That shift from comprehension to embodiment is where timelines begin to collapse and new realities unfold. Imagine awareness as a spotlight and coherence as the electricity that powers it. Without that current, the light flickers weakly against the old pattern's walls. The moment your emotion, intention, and action align, the current surges and the walls dissolve like mist. Coherence doesn't demand perfection, it asks for congruence. When you say you've forgiven, but your body still tightens at their name, your field hears the contraction, not the affirmation. When you affirm abundance yet vibrate scarcity, the quantum blueprint reads static. The universe doesn't interpret words, it reads frequencies. Emotional truth is the language of creation. This is why the loop feels so stubborn. You've been trying to outthink energy with intellect. The mind may understand the map, but only emotion can travel it. Coherence means feeling what you wish to embody until your cells remember it as reality. Gratitude before evidence, peace before closure, love before reciprocation. That is how you override probability. You may ask, how do I reach coherence when I still feel fragmented? Begin with presence. Breathe into the gap between your understanding and your experience. Don't rush to bridge it, simply occupy it. This is sacred ground. The gap itself is the training ground for coherence, the place where contradiction begins to harmonize. Picture your emotional field as water. Each thought is a pebble dropped into it. When you are scattered, the ripples clash, forming chaos. When you are aligned, each ripple moves outward in rhythm, mind, heart, and energy synchronized. The field feels that unity and mirrors it instantly. What you emit, how you invite, what you embody, who you attract. Coherence also requires honesty. The moment you pretend to feel aligned, you fracture the current. Pretending is noise in the signal. True coherence often begins with admitting incoherence, with breathing into the tension instead of hiding it behind affirmations. Awareness accepts. Coherence integrates. You do not force yourself into peace. You relax into truth until peace arises naturally. It's tempting to chase external evidence of progress, new people, better conversations, smoother outcomes, but these are side effects, not indicators. The real proof of coherence is internal, the absence of emotional static when life tests you. The pattern still appears, but you no longer collapse into it. You observe it from the stillness of your new vibration. That neutrality doesn't mean numbness. It means mastery. In that state, repetition becomes reflection. Each interaction shows you how steady your frequency has become. If chaos returns, it's not punishment, it's calibration. The field is giving you another chance to maintain coherence under pressure, to prove that your alignment is no longer conditional. Feel how empowering that is. You no longer fear the loop, because it cannot trap what refuses to resonate with it. Coherence breaks repetition through non-participation. The pattern dissolves because it has nothing left to bind to. So tonight, before you sleep, sit quietly and place your hand over your heart. Whisper not as a wish, but as a declaration, I am coherent with love. Feel those words as vibration, not thought. Let them ripple through your nervous system, through the architecture that once held you captive. Each breath you take in that state rewrites code. Awareness gave you sight. Coherence gives you sovereignty. The moment you live what you know, the quantum field has no choice but to rearrange. And when the world begins to shift around you, it won't feel like magic. It will feel like recognition, the external finally catching up to the truth you've been vibrating all along. The shift into coherence hums through you like a new current, but coherence is only the spark. To sustain it, you must live it. Embodiment is where the abstract becomes atomic, where your insights leave the realm of theory and enter the bloodstream of reality. The field doesn't evolve from what you believe, it evolves from what you become. You may have noticed how certain people seem to radiate calm without saying a word. They carry an atmosphere. That's embodiment, the living frequency made visible. It's not performance, it's resonance stabilized in form. Their thoughts, emotions, and actions no longer argue. They harmonize. The result is magnetism. You feel it before they speak, as though the air itself rearranges to meet their state. This is where you're headed. Embodiment means your energy moves first. Your reality follows. It's the silent language of congruence, no contradiction between your intentions and your presence. You stop trying to attract and begin allowing alignment to unfold, because you've become the vibration of what you once sought. To embody love isn't to declare, I am love. It's to be loving in the micro moments, when no one's watching, the way you speak to your reflection, the way you forgive a delay, the way you breathe through uncertainty. Every small coherence signals to the field that the new timeline is active. The quantum doesn't measure size, it measures frequency stability. Think of embodiment as rehearsal turned reality. Every thought and gesture rehearses a vibration. When repeated consistently with presence, that vibration becomes your baseline. You're teaching the universe who you are through how you move through ordinary moments. The sacred hides there in traffic, in silence, in how you choose to respond instead of react. But embodiment isn't sterile serenity. It's alive, pulsing, human. You'll still feel waves of emotion, flashes of the old pattern, moments of resistance. The difference is you no longer become them. You witness the surge without losing the signal. Feelings rise and fall like weather, but the climate remains coherent. That's the mark of mastery, not absence of storm, but stability within it. The challenge is consistency. You cannot embody what you visit occasionally. Embodiment is frequency endurance, the art of remaining aligned when life tempts you back into entropy. When someone presses your boundaries, when old attractions whisper their familiar music, you'll feel the tug of your former vibration. Pause there. Breathe. Choose differently. Each repetition of that choice reprograms your field. The body plays a crucial role. Energy isn't just ethereal, it's biochemical. When you walk, breathe, and move with awareness, you anchor new frequencies into matter. The body becomes the vessel through which consciousness sculpts reality. That's why ancient traditions spoke of breath as the bridge between worlds. Inhale, integrate, exhale, release. You are the meeting point between thought and form. Imagine your frequency as a musical tone vibrating through every cell. When you embody alignment, your body resonates like an instrument finely tuned. When you act from old fear or reaction, the sound distorts. The goal isn't perfection, it's returning to tune more quickly each time with practice. The distortions fade faster, and the melody of your being steadies into something unmistakable truth in motion. As embodiment deepens, something remarkable happens. You stop needing proof. You no longer check if it's working. The external simply mirrors your internal coherence without effort. Relationships recalibrate. Conversations soften. Synchronicities accelerate. Reality bends to your new rhythm because it recognizes the pattern of your signal. The temptation will come to label this state as arrival, but embodiment is cyclical, not final. You'll revisit old layers from new altitudes, each time integrating more depth, more subtlety. Don't mistake revisiting for regression. The spiral ascends through repetition transformed. Pause now. Feel your breath as evidence of embodiment energy entering form, form returning to energy. This is the simplest proof of the living frequency you carry. You are the experiment and the result, the observer and the creation, the sound and its echo. Every step from this point forward is not practice. It is proclamation. The field listens to your walk, your tone, your silence. All of it declares your frequency. All of it is creation, unfolding in real time. Embodiment hums steady, but even the clearest tone must breathe. The next movement in this symphony of awakening is surrender, not as defeat, but as release. You've tuned your energy, aligned your awareness, and begun to live your coherence. Yet something still clings beneath the surface, the subtle gravity of old attachments, the echo of identities you once needed, the faint pulse of control. Surrender is where the residue dissolves. It is not the giving up of intention, it is the relinquishing of resistance. When you stop gripping outcomes, the field flows again. The universe cannot deliver coherence while your hands are clenched around expectation. You must open, not to lose, but to let. You've been taught that control is safety, but in quantum terms, control is contraction, an energetic signal that says, I don't trust the unfolding. Surrender. However, broadcasts the opposite. I am aligned with flow. I allow reorganization. In that signal, probabilities rearrange themselves effortlessly. New timelines appear not because you chase them, but because you no longer block them. The paradox is sacred the moment you stop demanding transformation. it arrives. You stop pulling on the thread and the knot loosens on its own. This is the nature of surrender, an invisible rebalancing, a quiet recalibration of frequencies. You might ask, how do I surrender what I still care about? You don't discard the desire, you release the tension around it. Let the longing breathe. Allow love to exist without requirement. Surrender means you stop scripting outcomes and instead hold space for possibility. The field thrives in uncertainty. It's where creation gains access to every option at once. Think of it like this. Your attachments are gravitational anchors, keeping your timeline looped around familiar orbits. Every should, must, and can't is a tether pulling you backward. Release is not an intellectual act, it's energetic. You feel the anchor in your body, tightness in the chest, pressure in the jaw, heat behind the eyes. When you breathe into those sensations without judgment, the knots begin to untie themselves. Forgiveness plays its part here, too. To forgive isn't to condone, it's to free energy frozen in old configurations. Every resentment is an unclosed probability, an unfinished loop begging for closure. When you release it, the energy returns to motion, available again for creation. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's resource reclamation. And grief, that most misunderstood alchemy, walks hand in hand with surrender. To release is to let die the identity you built around attachment. There's a holiness in that mourning, the kind that cracks the heart wide enough for light to enter. Let the tears fall if they come. Each drop carries memory out of your field, clearing space for rebirth. As the energy loosens, something shifts subtly in your perception. Time feels softer. The need to predict or protect fades. You begin to trust the quantum intelligence moving through you, the invisible architect weaving outcomes your mind couldn't design. You notice synchronicities again, not as proofs, but as winks from the field whispering, "You're flowing now." Surrender doesn't end action, it purifies it. You still move, speak, choose, but without tension. Decisions made from surrender feel weightless, yet precise. You're no longer reacting from fear or attachment. You're responding from alignment. The difference is felt as ease, not effort. To practice surrender, begin small. In conversation, release the need to be understood. In planning, allow space for surprise. In emotion, let waves pass without labeling them as regressions. Each micro-surrender retrains your nervous system to trust the intelligence of unfolding. Eventually, surrender becomes second nature, a way of breathing. Control feels foreign, like holding your breath underwater. The more you release, the more the field orchestrates around your openness. Reality begins to move with you instead of against you. This is the art of quantum surrender. You stop demanding, start allowing, and reality rushes in to meet your relaxed vibration. The loop dissolves not through struggle, but through softening. You've spent lifetimes trying to steer the river. Now you become the current. And from that surrendering current, something luminous begins to rise, the quiet voice beneath the noise, the consciousness behind the thought. You felt it before, that subtle intuition that whispers before reason can respond. That presence is your higher self, the architect beyond the architecture, the one who remembers the design even as you walk through its halls. When the grip of control softens, the higher self steps forward. Alignment with it is not a mystical escape, it's a homecoming. It's remembering that the same intelligence that moves galaxies also breathes through your chest. This alignment doesn't require you to transcend humanity, it asks you to inhabit it completely. As the channel through which higher consciousness experiences form, the higher self communicates in resonance, not words. It speaks through knowing, timing, synchronicity. You recognize it by the texture of peace that follows its guidance. When the mind demands, prove it, The higher self answers only with silence and gentle certainty. Its messages don't shout, they align. But alignment is a practice, not an event. It's the continuous tuning of your awareness to that inner compass, especially when external reality tempts you back into the old frequencies of reaction and fear. The more you honor intuition over impulse, presence over prediction, the more coherent your connection becomes. Imagine a radio tuned between stations, static buzzing. That static is the friction between your human mind and your higher awareness. When you slow down, breathe, and listen beyond the noise, the signal strengthens. Eventually, intuition becomes unmistakable. You stop wondering if it's real because it keeps proving itself through the effortless precision of your unfolding. Alignment requires integrity. You cannot channel higher frequencies through a life built on self-betrayal. Each time you ignore intuition to please someone or silence your truth to avoid conflict, the signal weakens. The higher self doesn't punish. It simply mirrors coherence. When your actions match your awareness, the transmission clears. You become a broadcast tower for divine precision. In practical terms, this means small shifts. Speak when your heart warms, not when your mind strategizes. Rest when your energy withdraws, even if the world expects otherwise. Choose people and experiences that make your nervous system exhale. Each of these micro-alignments is a vote for your higher timeline. The field takes notes, it adjusts probabilities accordingly. You might wonder, how do I distinguish my higher self from my fears disguised as guidance? Fear feels urgent. Intuition feels inevitable. Fear shouts, "You must act now." Intuition whispers, "You already know." The difference is vibration. Fear contracts. Intuition expands. The more you practice listening, the clearer the contrast becomes. Alignment also means self-trust. When you live from coherence, you no longer outsource your knowing to others' approval. You stop seeking signs of worthiness because your presence itself becomes the sign. Relationships shift naturally, some dissolve, others deepen. You stop chasing connection and start emanating it. The higher self magnetizes allies, not saviors. At this level, communication with the quantum field becomes two-way. You don't just send frequencies, you receive them. The universe starts to feel conversational. You think of someone, and they message you. You feel drawn to a place, and an opportunity unfolds. These aren't coincidences, they are feedback loops confirming your alignment. The higher self doesn't operate in linear time. It sees across probabilities, guiding you through nudges rather than instructions. That's why patience becomes sacred here. When you try to rush alignment, you reintroduce control. When you wait in presence, the field delivers the perfect sequence. Every delay is choreography. Every detour, a refinement. You are no longer merely shifting patterns, you are shifting the perceiver. The you who used to chase love is becoming the consciousness that radiates it. The you who sought healing is now the healer through alignment. Pause for a moment and breathe into the crown of your head, imagining light descending gently into your spine. This isn't fantasy, it's an act of attunement. You are synchronizing your human instrument with its original composer. When you live from this alignment, relationships transform, not because others change, but because your vibration no longer requires lessons in reflection. The mirror becomes clear, and what you meet is simply resonance. The higher self doesn't take control, it takes harmony. It doesn't demand faith, it restores memory. And in that remembrance, love stops being something you find and becomes the frequency you live. From the stillness of alignment, daily life begins to shimmer with new meaning. Every ordinary moment becomes a field of calibration, an opportunity to stabilize the frequency of your higher self in motion. Presence is no longer just awareness, it's participation. It's the art of living as coherence, not merely reaching for it. This is where the spiritual becomes practical. The quantum isn't some far-off mystery. It's every breath, every glance, every thought you allow to vibrate through you without distortion. Presence is how you bring cosmic architecture into human form. It's not about perfect meditation or eternal calm. It's about being awake while doing the dishes, while walking into conversations that once triggered you, while remembering that the field listens to every micro-choice you make. You start to realize that your energy precedes you before you enter a room. The quantum field already registers your frequency. It rearranges possibilities around the state you're holding. That's why presence isn't passive, it's strategic. The more aware you are of your emotional resonance, the more consciously you shape the probabilities that await you. Begin each day with a gentle scan. Before touching your phone or the noise of the world, place your hand over your heart and ask quietly, "What am I broadcasting today?" Don't answer with words, feel the response. Maybe it's calm, maybe it's resistance. Whatever arises, you've just identified your signal. Awareness transforms it. Denial sustains it. If tension appears, breathe it open. Inhale through the center of your chest, as though inviting the field itself into your lungs. Exhale as if releasing static. The body remembers alignment faster than the mind. The breath is the password to coherence. Throughout the day, practice micro-presence. When someone speaks, truly listen. When you eat, taste deliberately. When you walk, notice the rhythm of your steps syncing with your heartbeat. Each act of attention reaffirms your command over reality. The field interprets this level of presence as readiness and responds in kind. Even your emotional waves become instruments of creation. Instead of suppressing them, you translate them. Anxiety becomes alertness misdirected. Anger becomes unexpressed power. Sadness becomes evidence of depth. By reframing emotion as energy rather than enemy, you reclaim every frequency as usable fuel. Nothing is wasted, everything is transmuted. And yet presence doesn't demand isolation. True alignment expands through relationship. Every person you encounter becomes a mirror, helping refine your frequency. Some will amplify your coherence, others will expose what's still incoherent. Both are sacred. When discomfort arises, ask, what part of me is being invited into integration? The question itself diffuses the charge, transforming friction into feedback. Evening rituals complete the cycle. Before sleep, take inventory not of achievements, but of energy. Where did you contract? Where did you stay open? No judgment, just observation. You are learning to read your own waveform, to track the fluctuations that sculpt your reality. With each reflection, you train your field to stabilize in awareness, faster, smoother, stronger. You can write declarations if they feel natural. I am coherent with my highest timeline, or I allow relationships to mirror my healed frequency. The power isn't in the words, it's in the emotion that rides them. When feeling and statement merge, the declaration becomes a frequency anchor. It tells the quantum field this pattern is real. Now, consistency is key. The universe doesn't respond to occasional alignment. It harmonizes with sustained vibration. Daily presence is the maintenance of that vibration. It's how you demonstrate readiness for higher timelines, not through effort, but through steadiness. Soon, you'll notice the feedback. Conversations that once drained you now end in laughter. Tasks that felt meaningless now hum with synchronicity. Even challenges arrive with precision, like training exercises designed by your higher self. Life no longer happens to you, it happens through you. Presence turns existence into dialogue. Each breath says, I am here. Each choice replies. Then let's create. The more you participate consciously, the more the universe mirrors your rhythm. This is quantum practice, not escape from reality, but intimacy with it. You become the bridge between dimensions, the divine made practical, the infinite made personal. And when you wake tomorrow, the field will listen again, waiting for the first note of your day's vibration. From the still hum of daily presence, another dimension of mastery emerges, the power of inner imagery fused with emotion. Visualization, when paired with genuine feeling, is not fantasy. It is frequency sculpting. It's how you whisper new instructions to the field without words, shaping probability through imagination alive with coherence. You've visualized before, perhaps to manifest goals or heal pain, but this is different. Emotional alchemy transforms visualization from wishful thinking into energetic transmutation. It's not about getting something, it's about becoming the version of yourself that naturally magnetizes it. Close your eyes and imagine for a moment a connection that feels clean, expansive, mutual, where energy moves both ways like breath. Don't picture a specific face, focus on sensation. What does it feel like in your chest when love circulates freely? How does your body respond when trust is effortless? The field reads these sensations as commands. It doesn't distinguish between imagination and experience. It responds to vibration. That's why emotional engagement is the amplifier. When feeling fuses with image, the blueprint solidifies. The universe rearranges matter to match the emotional data you consistently broadcast. This is quantum design through feeling. But here lies the subtlety: visualization without embodiment creates tension. It keeps your desired state at a distance, an ideal you look at rather than live from. To bypass that, immerse yourself fully. Feel as though the image is already the now. Let your breath slow as your nervous system learns the signature of your new frequency. You're training your body to believe what your mind already sees. Over time, the field no longer registers the vision as potential. It begins treating it as reality. That's why people and circumstances start to shift around you. They're responding to the energetic evidence you've created within. Yet, emotional alchemy isn't only about positive feeling. Shadow emotion carries enormous charge. To anger, fear, grief, these, when transmuted, become the strongest catalysts. Rather than suppressing or exiling them, invite them into the visualization chamber. See the anger as molten fire melting old attachments. See grief as water cleansing timelines. See fear as wind scattering static from your field. Emotion isn't your enemy, it's the alchemist's element. Through this process, you learn that energy never disappears. It only changes form. What once felt heavy becomes luminous when integrated. That's why quantum masters are not emotionless. They are emotionally fluent. They know how to let every frequency serve the evolution of coherence. If you practice consistently, you'll notice that visualization becomes less of a ritual and more of a natural function, like dreaming while awake. You start seeing flashes of possibility overlaying ordinary reality. Subtle déjà vu, a sense of "I've been here before" when aligned events occur. That's your consciousness previewing the timeline you've already stabilized vibrationally. To strengthen the practice, create a daily window, 5 minutes of undistracted focus. Sit, breathe, and invite your higher self to show you an image that reflects your next aligned relational frequency. Don't force it. Let it arrive as sensation, symbol, or scene. Then amplify the emotion that accompanies it. Feel the gratitude as though it has already unfolded. That feeling is the code. The key is consistency, not intensity. Small daily doses build momentum. Think of it as tuning an instrument every morning before the concert of your day. You're aligning inner tone with the outer reality. Eventually, reality plays the song you rehearsed internally. And when you forget, when life's noise drowns your clarity, return to the simplest image, the light in your heart expanding outward. touching everything without grasping. That image alone recalibrates the field, because love is the master frequency, the bass note of all creation. Visualization with emotional alchemy isn't escape, it's rehearsal for presence. It reminds you that the future isn't waiting somewhere ahead. It's forming now in the quiet theater of your nervous system. Every breath paints a frame, every feeling shapes a scene, and when the picture completes itself in energy, the physical world catches up, pixel by pixel, heartbeat by heartbeat. And as your inner images settle into coherence, something unexpected begins to unfold beyond you. You notice it first in the small spaces, in how people speak softer around you, how tension dissipates mid-conversation, how strangers smile for no reason at all. This is not coincidence. It is morphic resonance in motion. The field around you has shifted, and the collective consciousness is responding. When one person becomes coherent, the field takes note, like a tuning fork that resets the pitch of an entire orchestra. Your vibration subtly reorganizes the energy of those within reach. You are no longer an isolated frequency. You are an emitter, quiet, powerful, catalytic. Your presence becomes a living transmission of everything you've embodied: awareness, surrender, love. You've probably felt this ripple from others before. The room that suddenly feels safe because someone calm walked in. The conversation that turns meaningful when one heart opens first. These moments aren't psychological accidents. They're evidence of the quantum web that connects consciousness across bodies. Every coherent state you maintain sends a signal through that web, reminding other nervous systems of their own potential for balance. This is the invisible service of the awakened. You don't have to preach, convince, or fix. You stabilize, you radiate, you hold the tone when others forget theirs. Slowly, relationships around you begin to harmonize. Arguments resolve faster, old emotional roles dissolve. The field starts to mirror the coherence you've practiced privately for so long. But this resonance works in both directions. Collective fields can influence you as well. That's why protection isn't about building walls, it's about maintaining frequency integrity. The moment you slip into fear or judgment, you synchronize with the very distortion you're observing. Stay open, but stay centered. Let empathy flow through you, not into you. When someone enters your life vibrating at an older frequency, remember, they're not here to pull you backward. They're responding to your signal, seeking recalibration. You don't heal them by absorbing their weight. You invite them into your rhythm. Some will rise to meet it, others will drift away. Both outcomes serve the same purpose: clarity. You'll also find that your creative influence expands. Work, art, conversation, everything becomes transmission. The way you write a message, the way you pour a cup of coffee, even the silence you share carries encoded coherence. Energy travels through every gesture. You become a frequency anchor for higher relational possibilities, not only in romance or friendship, but across humanity's web of interaction. This is where personal healing becomes planetary. When enough individuals stabilize love, the collective field begins to reorganize toward harmony. The data of your transformation uploads to the shared quantum archive, accessible to all who resonate. It's less mystical than it sounds. It's how evolution happens from within, through resonance. Yet humility is essential here. The moment you believe yourself the source rather than the conduit, the flow constricts. You're not doing the healing, you're allowing it. You're an instrument, not the orchestra. Keep returning to surrender, the mother tone of coherence. As the ripple widens, you may feel waves of sensitivity energies, emotions, even global tension registering through your system. Don't mistake this empathy for burden. It's evidence of connection. When you sense collective heaviness, breathe light through your field and release it into neutrality. You are part of a planetary nervous system learning to regulate itself. And so, Your personal journey through repetition, awareness, coherence, embodiment, and surrender wasn't only for you. It was rehearsal for contribution. Each step you took to free yourself sent a signal that freedom is possible. Every act of forgiveness became an instruction in the morphic fabric, teaching others through resonance rather than words. The final paradox is this: the more individual you become, the more collective your influence grows. The more you embody selfhood, the more you serve wholeness. You realize there was never separation, only different notes waiting to tune to the same harmony. Look around. The world hasn't changed overnight, yet something feels undeniably different, subtler, lighter, more responsive. That's the reflection of your frequency shimmering back. The field is listening, learning, reorganizing. You are not just in the ripple, you are the ripple. And from here, the wave begins. The ripple expands, then softens, spreading until it becomes still water again. That stillness is where you return now, not to end the journey, but to integrate it, to let all the learning settle into your bones. Breathe. You've moved through recognition, coherence, embodiment, surrender, and resonance. Each stage dissolved another layer of resistance until only presence remained. And now, in the calm after transformation, you understand the field was never separate from you. It was listening all along, echoing every tone you played, responding to every signal you sent. Integration is quiet magic. Nothing flashy, no fireworks, just life continuing with a new hum beneath it. You speak differently. You listen differently. Even your silence carries weight. This is what real alignment feels like: the absence of strain, the return to flow so natural you forget you ever fought it. You may notice traces of the old patterns still floating at the edges. Don't mistake them for failure. They're memories of frequencies you've outgrown, faint echoes of lessons learned. Thank them, release them, and return to center. The present moment is the still point between waves, the zero point from which new realities rise. In this space, creation happens effortlessly, not because you command it, but because you are it. Every coherent thought becomes instruction, every breath, communication. You walk through life as a living signal, no longer chasing alignment, but radiating it. The relationships that align with this version of you will not demand proof or persuasion. They will feel like ease, like recognition, like home. And even when contrast appears, you'll meet it with grace, knowing that every wave returns to stillness eventually. So pause here at the threshold. Let the stillness expand until it fills the room around you. Let it ripple through your chest, your field, your timeline. The transformation isn't something you carry, it's what you've become. And when you move forward from this moment, do it gently, not as someone who has figured it out, but as someone who remembers. The mirror no longer reflects the past, it projects the infinite. Walk slowly, speak softly. The field is listening and it responds to the quietest truth of all: you are already home.